quiet gas station, a bored teenager, a phone that should never have rung. Harold thought the night shift would be easy, just another uneventful evening in the middle of nowhere. But when a desperate voice calls, begging for help, claiming to be trapped in the gas station bathroom, everything changes. At first, Harold thinks it's a prank. He checks the bathroom. It's empty. He hangs up, but the calls keep coming. The voice grows weaker, more desperate. "You were just here. How did you not see me?" Then the police trace the call, and Harold realizes the horrifying truth. The voice was never lying. A chilling mystery unfolds as the walls of the gas station hide a secret no one was meant to find. By the time they uncover it, it's already too late. Dark, foreboding, and yet somewhat peaceful are just a few words to describe the neon-lit signs of a gas station in the middle of a desert, a place seemingly located nowhere. A bored but relaxed teenager stood behind the counter, waiting for the occasional customer who rarely came by at night. Working the night shift at the gas station gave Harold a chance to unwind after completing his tasks. He'd taken the job to appease his mother, who constantly nagged him about being lazy during summer break. Harold had spent most of his days lying around the house, watching television and playing video games. To get her off his back, he accepted this quiet night shift at a gas station near their home, a job that promised both peace and solitude. One night, as Harold enjoyed the rare serenity of his shift, the phone rang. The sound startled him. It was unusual for the gas station to receive calls, especially so late at night. "Hello?" Harold answered, a hint of curiosity in his voice. "Oh, thank God someone picked up," came a frantic response. Can I help you?" Harold asked, confused. "You damn well can. I've been stuck in the bathroom for days without food or water. Call the fire department, or at least open the damn door." Bewildered by the strange plea, Harold put down the phone and walked to the gas station bathroom. However, when he opened the door, he found it completely empty. A grimy, disgusting space, typical of gas station restrooms, but with no sign of anyone inside. Frustrated, Harold returned to the phone. "Listen, jackass," Harold said angrily. "I just checked the bathroom. You're not in there. In fact, no one's in there at all." "What the hell are you talking about?" the voice on the other end yelled in desperation. "I just saw you come in. There's no way you didn't see me." "Fine," Harold snapped. "I'll check both bathrooms. But if you're not there, I'm done with your prank calls, got it?" Slamming the phone down, Harold stormed off to check the bathrooms again, both the men's and women's this time. But as expected, they were completely empty. Furious, he marched back to the phone just as it rang again. "How the hell did you not see me when I was right in front of you?" the voice screamed, even more desperate now. "Listen, buddy," Harold said with finality. "I've got 3 hours left on my shift, and I'm not wasting them on your stupid prank calls. So piss off and don't call again." He slammed the phone down. The next day, Harold's manager called to ask if he'd been harassed by a prank caller, claiming to be trapped in the gas station bathroom. Harold explained what had happened, and the manager assured him that he would call the police if the prankster persisted. A few days later, the calls continued. This time, the manager kept his word and contacted the police. When the prankster called again, sounding weak and desperate, an officer was sent to trace the call. As the officer worked, his face suddenly went pale. "The call? It's coming from inside the gas station," he said. "We need to call the fire department immediately." The fire department arrived and began searching the building. Hours later, They found the source of the calls, a man wedged inside the walls of the gas station, emaciated and barely alive. "I told you I was in the gas station," the man whispered with his final breath. A young boy lives in a house next to a tree that overlooks the road. A pret, which seems to be a mischievous ghost, lives in the tree and pulls pranks on people walking or driving their carts or cars underneath. One day, the government cuts down the tree to widen the road, and so the pret, deprived of its tree, moves into the house and starts playing pranks on the family. Things get so bad that they're determined to move away, so they pack everything up into their car, and then the story starts. It was grandmother who decided that we must move to another house, and it was all because of a pret, a mischievous ghost, who had been making life intolerable for everyone. In India, prets usually live in peepal trees, and that's where our pret first had his abode. In the branches of an old peepal which had grown through the compound wall and had spread into the garden on our side and over the road on the other side. For many years the pret had lived there quite happily, without bothering anyone in the house. I suppose the traffic on the road had kept him fully occupied. Sometimes, when a Tonga was passing, he would frighten the pony, and, as a result, the little pony cart would go reeling off the road. Occasionally, he would get into the engine of a car or bus, which would soon afterwards have a breakdown. And he liked to knock the solotopus off the heads of sahibs, who would curse and wonder how a breeze had sprung up so suddenly, only to die down again just as quickly. Although the pret could make himself felt, and sometimes heard, he was invisible to the human eye. At night, people avoided walking beneath the peepal tree. It was said that if you yawned beneath the tree, the pret would jump down your throat and ruin your digestion. Grandmother's tailor, Jaspel, who never had anything ready on time, blamed the pret for all his troubles. Once, when yawning, Jaspal had forgotten to snap his fingers in front of his mouth, always mandatory when yawning beneath peepal trees, and the pret had got in without any difficulty. Since then, Jaspal had always been suffering from tummy upsets, but it had left our family alone until one day the peepal tree had been cut down. It was nobody's fault except, of course, that grandfather had given the Public Works Department permission to cut the tree which had been standing on our land. They wanted to widen the road, and the tree and a bit of wall were in the way, so both had to go. In any case, not even a ghost can prevail against the PWD. But hardly a day had passed when we discovered that the pret, deprived of his tree, had decided to take up residence in the bungalow. And since a good pret must be bad in order to justify his existence, he was soon up to all sorts of mischief in the house. He began by hiding grandmother's spectacles whenever she took them off. "I'm sure I put them down on the dressing table," she grumbled. A little later, they were found balanced precariously on the snout of a wild boar, whose stuffed and mounted head adorned the veranda wall. Being the only boy in the house, I was at first blamed for this prank, but a day or two later, when the spectacles disappeared again only to be discovered dangling from the wires of the parrot's cage, it was agreed that some other agency was at work. Grandfather was the next to be troubled. He went into the garden one morning to find all his prized sweet peas snipped off and lying on the ground. Uncle Ken was the next to suffer. He was a heavy sleeper, and once he'd gone to bed, he hated being woken up. So when he came to the breakfast table looking bleary-eyed and miserable, we asked him if he wasn't feeling all right. "I couldn't sleep a wink last night," he complained. "Every time I was about to fall asleep, the bedclothes would be pulled off the bed. I had to get up at least a dozen times to pick them off the floor. He stared balefully at me. Where were you sleeping last night, young man? I had an alibi. In Grandfather's room, I said. That's right, said Grandfather. And I'm a light sleeper. I'd have woken up if he'd been sleepwalking. It's that ghost from the peepal tree, said Grandmother. It has moved into the house. First my spectacles, then the sweet peas, and now Ken's bedclothes. What will it be up to next? I wonder. We did not have to wonder for long. There followed a series of disasters. Vases fell off tables. Pictures came down the walls. Parrot feathers turned up in the teapot while the parrot himself let out indignant squawks in the middle of the night. Uncle Ken found a crow's nest in his bed, and on tossing it out of the window was attacked by 2 crows. When Aunt Minnie came to stay, things got worse. The Pretts seemed to take an immediate dislike to Aunt Minnie. She was a nervous, easily excitable person, just the right sort of prey for a spiteful ghost. Somehow her toothpaste got switched with a tube of Grandfather's shaving cream, and when she appeared in the sitting room, foaming at the mouth, we ran for our lives. Uncle Ken was shouting that she'd got rabies. 2 days later, Aunt Minnie complained that she had been hit on the nose by a grapefruit, which had of its own accord taken a leap from the pantry shelf and hurtled across the room straight at her. A bruised and swollen nose testified to the attack. Aunt Minnie swore that life had been more peaceful in Upper Burma. We'll have to leave this house, declared Grandmother. If we stay here much longer, both Ken and Minnie will have nervous breakdowns. I thought Aunt Minnie broke down long ago, I said. None of your cheek, snapped Aunt Minnie. Anyway, I agree about changing the house, I said breezily. I can't even do my homework. The ink bottle is always empty. There was ink in the soup last night. That came from Grandfather. And so, a few days and several disasters later, we began moving to a new house. 2 bullock carts laden with furniture and heavy luggage were sent ahead. The roof of the old car was piled high with bags and kitchen utensils. Everyone squeezed into the car, and Grandfather took the driver's seat. We were barely out of the gate when we heard a peculiar sound, as if someone was chuckling and talking to himself on the roof of the car. Is the parrot out there on the luggage rack? The query came from Grandfather. No, he's in the cage on one of the bullock carts, said Grandmother. Grandfather stopped the car, got out, and took a look at the roof. Nothing up there, he said, getting in again and starting the engine. I'm sure I heard the parrot talking. Grandfather had driven some way up the road when the chuckling started again, followed by a squeaky little voice. We all heard it. It was the Pret talking to itself. Let's go, it squeaked gleefully. A new house, I can't wait to see it. What fun we're going to have. Some towns bury their past. This one buried something much worse. Cecilia Dodger swore she'd never return to Forgotten. But when she's invited as the guest of honor for the town's bicentennial, she knows exactly why she's here. Beneath the town square, beneath the cheap concrete slab of a forgotten time capsule, something ancient stirs. A demon sealed away a century ago by her grandfather waiting for its release. The vinyl banner looked cheap enough, in keeping with what Cecilia remembered of Forgotten standards. Time capsule opening 2 p.m. It announced in simple block letters, and smaller print below was also part of the Forgotten bicentennial celebrations. Cecilia squinted out the car window at the banner and the pagoda it limply hung over. She never thought she would be back in Foggertown at this ratty park, in this rattier town square. let alone be here as this burg's special guest of honor. Made it just in time, Aunt Cecilia, the pert teenaged girl announced from the driver's side. Glad to be back home? The old woman glared over at the way too sweet girl and just managed to tone down her scowl before she answered. This hellhole ceased to be my home when I was your age and left it for college, Cecilia snapped. Then she sighed and turned away a moment to gaze back at the slight crowd gathering around the park's pagoda. I'm sorry, Lubell. You don't deserve that. I appreciate your driving an hour to Asheville to pick me up at the airport, especially since we'd never met. The young woman reached out a tentative hand and placed it on Cecilia's shoulder. The pertness toned down. Cecilia's grandniece smiled and shyly spoke back. Aunt Cecilia, any excuse to be out of this crap hole and see Asheville, even driving through, is a treat for me. She gestured out the car's windshield at the minuscule festival going on in the park. I'm treating this celebration like a going-away party. I start classes at Carolina next week. Don't tell Mama, but I don't plan on coming back for Thanksgiving or ever again. Cecilia smiled, the first one she'd spared for this homecoming. My, that is a nice surprise. Whoever will carry on the Dodger legacy if you go. Please, Great Aunt Sweetie, I know what this town did to your granddaddy and our whole family. I've got bigger dreams than keeping the family curse alive. Cecilia smirked at the girl's naïve reference to their shared curse. Now put on your best Sunday Baptist smile. Here comes our esteemed mayor to greet you. Cecilia turned back to the passenger window. Before she could prepare herself, the door was jerked open and a grinning toad of a man was sticking a flaccid-looking hand out at her. Cecilia Dodger, it is an honor, the balding, gray-suited toad announced as he wrapped a sweaty palm around hers, pulling her not as helpfully as he imagined out of the car. Not often we get to welcome back a descendant of one of our founding fathers to our fair little town. I am Wilfred Fogart. Your granddaddy and mine founded the mill that brought Forgotten prosperity. We went to school together, if you remember. Yes, I remember you, Willie, Cecilia thought. Remember the times you and your pack of inbred redneck dogs used to chase me behind the bleachers at the high school. Just one of the uncherished highlights of her time in this garbage town. She'd try to tell Daddy what you tried to do, but he would just sigh and weakly reference how the Fogarts led a charmed life in this town. Grandpa would say, be thankful the Dodgers had enough charm left to keep Will Fogart and his ilk at bay. So, Fogart continued, what say we get on with the ceremony and see what gifts our grandpappy's buried in that capsule for our town to enjoy? He turned to address the crowd. Everybody, join us at the grandstand so we can open the Forgotten time capsule. Strike up the band. And Wilfred strode away from Cecilia with the rest of the onlookers, while the band, a recording of county music, started blaring from the cheap sound system. Cecilia regained her breath before turning back to her niece. Lubell took her aunt by the arm and tenderly guided her toward the pagoda. Sorry I couldn't keep him from doing that, the girl apologized. That crooked slime ball is close to the top of the list of things I'll be glad to see in my rearview mirror next week. Cecilia opened her handbag as they walked and drew out a folded sheet of paper. The paper was fairly new, but the words that were copied there from an older original were ancient and well-rehearsed. I'm only here to fulfill my grandfather's dying wish. Then I'm hoping everything will be avenged? Wait, what? Lubell asked, slowing them down to a halt. What do you mean? Avenged? Aunt Cecilia, just what are you here to do? Cecilia looked into the younger woman's concerned eyes, measured what she found there, and made a quick decision. When I was ready to leave this dump for college, My suitcases were packed a month ahead of time. Have you packed yours, child? Well, mostly, Lubel said, slyly grinning. I've already got 2 bags of essentials in the front hall closet, in case I have another argument with Daddy about going and want to get the hell on out. Listen, Lubel, listen, and don't think about what I'm saying. It'll take too long to believe it anyway. It took my granddaddy all my life to get me to believe it and accept it could be real. Real what, Aunt Cecilia? Lubel asked, scared as well as concerned now. Cecilia glanced up at the podium on the pagoda, where Wilfred was revving up a Glory Days speech. She turned back to the girl and fixed her with a spell-casting gaze. Literally, spell-casting. The girl stood entranced as an aura of unknown origin seemed to halo her great-aunt while she spoke. I'm sure you've heard all the colorful stories about how much of a crackpot your great-granddad was, always dabbling in the big mysticism fads going on at the turn of the century. Well, there was more truth to the stuff he was studying than most people ever realized. He did dabble in black arts, as they'd say. Not just him, but also his business partner. Old Man Fogart learned as much as Hiram Dodger did, and used what he learned to bring himself good luck and others bad. But that wasn't enough. Fogart decided he wanted to summon an actual demon from hell, learned all the incantations, gathered all the right sacrifices, blood sacrifices, and finally tried it, and failed, I hope, Lubel whispered. To the girl's terror, Cecilia shook her head. It was the last act Fogart ever did, bringing that devil over to our side. It wasn't a heart attack that killed him that night, like the local paper said. What killed him is why they held a closed casket funeral. But the demon? Did your granddaddy stop it? Tried to. He'd gotten to Fogart's place too late to stop it crossing over, but he was able to cast a spell to catch it and imprison it? Imprison it where? The girl whispered softly, then had a realization and jerked her gaze around at the pagoda where the crowd was gathered. Hiram was in charge of what was going to go into that time capsule as part of the town's centennial anniversary celebration. When they crack that concrete slab by the pagoda and open the box, most of what they'll find will be surprisingly dull. The aura dissolved as Cecilia mused further. Bunch of old photos, poems written by the Sunday school, hats and dresses made by the old mill, and a tin of Prince Albert pipe tobacco. Lubel, go home. Grab your suitcases from the hall closet. Get in your car and drive like hell. Don't be in town by the time they jackhammer that slab off. Dump that box and let Prince Albert out of the can. Lubel clutched Cecilia's arm. No, come with me. Yeah, this sounds crazy, but I also believe you. I've seen too many evil things in this town not to believe you. You shouldn't be here either when that thing gets out. I'll be fine, child. I hope, Cecilia explained, looking again at the paper. Granddad couldn't be here for the next centennial, so he made one more spell for the demon. Before that tin gets opened, I have to speak this spell. I'll claim the words are some Cherokee dialect, like anyone here'd know the difference. Then anyone who has a good heart and never harmed others will be protected. Cecilia looked at Lubel. Child, you know this town. Do you think that spell will really protect many people here? Despite her terror, a bark of a laugh came out of Lubel's mouth. She kissed her aunt and ran back to her car. Cecilia waved as the vehicle tore out of the town square, not knowing if the girl looked back in the mirror. She turned as her name was called over the loudspeaker. Miss Cecilia, would you care to join us for the opening ceremony? Fogart called out. There's more events in our centennial festivities and we're running out of time. Yes, you are running out of time. Cecilia agreed as she walked toward the pagoda,